probably like 2 minutes into this song called Like That, there was a special feature in Kendrick Lamar that just went in. When I mean in, I mean like in. It's not like, is it in type beat? No, it's like, it's in. Thank you very much. He said, think I won't drop the location. I still got PTSD. Mother F the big three. Fella, it's just Big B. Pretty freaking crazy. Nationers, welcome back to another episode of The Realest Podcast, episode 59. Nationers, banner is right behind me, as always. This is crazy, because I have not done a podcast episode, or at least uploaded one, right? Uploaded one. Let me see here. I'm going to, oh, that's the wrong account. Let's go to switch accounts, YouTube Studio. 356 days, Nation. Hasn't been a year yet. But funny enough, episode 58, which was obviously roughly last year, was an episode talking about the TikTok ban, which I thought about and contemplated talking about in this episode, just because it's kind of prevalent. It's kind of ongoing. There hasn't been anything for certain other than like a few votes passed in our legislation. And I didn't feel like talking about it today because I feel like we've already talked about it so many times. And I feel like every year it's like this annual like, oh, like, hey, I think we should try and ban TikTok. And then obviously I talk about it. Thousands of others talk about it as well. So Nationers, welcome back into another live stream. Jesus. It's a podcast. I haven't podcasted obviously in, a little over a year. But it's good to be back. It really is. The reason, as many of you guys are probably wondering, why did you leave, Jared? Why did you not upload a podcast over the past 356 days? Mainly, one of the reasons was, this podcast room, the studio that I'm in, is kind of like our guest room, if that makes sense. And not that we had like anyone living with us or somebody had taken this over. It's just more or less like a bunch of stuff had taken this entire room over. One being, we were actually remodeling our kitchen, and we are also remodeling our living room, and then also just like painting our walls and whatnot. So kind of a lot of stuff on the walls. We have like a few pictures, we have bulletin boards, and then a bunch of kitchen stuff got put in here pretty much. And so the hard part about that is I really couldn't podcast. And I feel like maybe I could have like set up like a different area for the time being. And then I think like once I was out of the habit of like going up here, checking if things are, good and getting ready, I kind of just lost the habit, just like anything, you bite your nails, and then you kind of, you distract yourself, or maybe you broke your hand. Now your hand's in a cast. Now you can't bite your nails. Right. And so then when you're done with the cast and you're out of the cast, that is, you're not really biting your nails because you kind of broke that habit. So yeah, I'm back. Episode 59. Have a lot of things to talk about. One being the year in review of things that happened over this past year. There's a few that obviously come to mind. I didn't have like a proper list, which I felt like in my mind, I'm like, I should make a list. And then I was like, no, I'll be fine. Like, I'll remember it. And to maybe my discredit, I don't remember all of it. I do remember a few things, some big things, and even a thing that just happened right now. I think more or less it comes in the form of like tragic events, That's just kind of what happened when, my mind was thinking of some things. One being OceanGate. I feel like this was a topic very heavily touched on. OceanGate, the OceanGate submarine going down to the Titanic in a commercial, you buy money, you go down there. That accident that happened in June. By the way, I looked it up. That happened in June, by the way. June 18th is when it, I think, officially imploded. Or went missing. I think it went missing and went implode. Like it, we know now that it imploded. That's why it went missing. So that's one thing. Another thing that just actually happened, another tragic event, which I hate that I'm laughing about, but it's just like, this is all that I could think of over the past year, right? The bridge in Baltimore. You know how insane that is? I've never lived in my lifetime where like engineering's really gone wrong, right? There's been like a few human errors that have kind of caused, things to go wrong. But like the bridge just didn't collapse by itself. It got hit by a cargo ship. That's not like just human error from the bridge's part. Like, oh, we forgot to tighten a bolt and then now the bridge is collapsed. Like literally the cargo ship lost power. It lost its steering, mechanics because of that. And it barreled right through one of the large posts that holds up this Baltimore bridge. And I remember I was live streaming. Somebody typed in my chat and I was like, they asked me, Jared, have you heard about the Baltimore news? And mind you, Baltimore doesn't get like the best coverage when it comes to like worldwide attention news, right? Other than maybe just like, the sports that are there. And I like look it up. I don't find anything right away. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll just look up like Baltimore, news. And then I go to like the news category and there wasn't like anything breaking. Like usually when you type up like something like the OceanGate stuff had like articles, like you immediately see articles. This one was a little different. I had to like go to the news and then like it was just like now breaking, like it had just broken. And so like 22 minutes ago, it had said like ship hits and bridge collapses. I was like, oh my gosh. And like it's just happening when not only is it like 20 minutes ago, but also when the article is like 3 sentences long, like when there's no details about what's happened. That's how fresh it was. And so like, thanks to my chat, I was kind of fresh onto that news. And then by the time I think everyone had woke up, obviously on the Eastern Coast, mostly Central. And then I think, obviously, if you're up late on the Pacific and maybe even Mountain Time, that type of stuff you might have heard maybe before you went to bed. And obviously maybe in Hawaii as well, in Alaska. I always forget Alaska. Sorry if you guys are from Alaska. You're up there. Anywho. That happened, and I was like, that's crazy. So that's kind of like a recent event that has happened. There's been a lot of stuff, some recent stuff that I want to go through. There's been obviously some things that have kind of been caused over the last, or not caused, but again, maybe ongoing news, right? One of these things actually that I want to talk about today, which I'll get into, but most importantly, there is one thing that you guys probably, had a lot of eyes on, was the Jeffrey Epstein list. Now, this list was pretty crazy just because, like, we obviously already know a little bit about, like, the conspiracy theory of Jeffrey Epstein's death, right? There's enough news about that event in itself, but to make and garner enough news, in a list that was going to come out with over 400 and I believe 62 names, of people that, were apparently either on the flight logs, were mentioned in these court documents. It was like a pretty eventful thing. It kind of felt like a worldwide Fortnite event. Like back in the day when Fortnite events would happen, you'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing nothing this Saturday. We are watching that. We're in the game, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is like, this is worldwide. It felt very much like a worldwide event for people that actually obviously didn't even care as well, right? Like there's a lot of people that probably didn't keep up a whole lot with, or don't even care about, right? The Jeffrey Epstein, everything that he's done since the mid-90s. But for people, this was like an event. January 23rd, we're going to be releasing a list. And I think like, I don't know if it was like a few months or like if there was like an additional list that had dropped, but that was like, that was like Michael Jackson, like dropping like an album, right? Like everyone's stopping, right? Like everyone's stopping and listening to that album. And on January 22nd, everyone was, looking up, like, they're looking up names. A lot of people are taking like overs, unders, like, oh, is this person going to be, is this person like, yes, no. Obviously, there's some obvious ones, like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. There was obviously, I think there was an underwhelming amount of like celebrity names mentioned, but there was one that actually stuck out a lot more than I think people thought of. And that was Stephen Hawking. Mind you, Stephen Hawking has since passed. He's passed, right? I'm not dumb. Like, there's a part of me that just like doesn't remember when he did. Stephen Hawking. He's okay. He passed away in 2018. I know that I wasn't like, I was like, am I just like saying RIP to this guy that's like still alive? So to that, he was mentioned in a pretty explicit email talking about like underage orgies. Now, if you guys don't know who Stephen Hawking is, he is a physicist that lives, I don't know if he was born with it, like a condition, but he was, let me just look up like his bio because I don't want to get this wrong. So he is an English theoretical physicist, cosmologist, that's it. An author who directed the research at the Center of Theoretical Cosmology at the University of Cambridge. Now, Cambridge, pretty cool. It's over in Massachusetts. I don't know what his condition is. So he's paralyzed. He has ALS, which is lateral scoliosis. And so he's in a wheelchair. He's in a wheelchair. And he kind of communicates through like a little wire that, you know, very similarly now is kind of like that Neuralink thing that Elon Musk and that whole shebang is kind of working on. And to its point, he was credited or mentioned, not credited. He was mentioned in an email sent from Jeffrey Epstein from his, you know, personal or business or private, however you want to describe it. It's public now. He had been mentioned in an underage orgy, and they were trying to basically scrub that from the theories that were going around. Now, he has been pictured on the island. He has been pictured in a submarine. He's been pictured at a table at like one of the cabanas there on Epstein Island, and that was a pretty wild thing to have happen because I don't know if anyone ever would have thought that he, Stephen Hawking, was mentioned amongst the, you know, 400 plus names. So that's one thing. There was a few people that were mentioned in it that, you know, obviously denied. I think like Naomi Campbell was there's like lists and tiers of people. There's like people you're just like, oh, they kind of got just like mentioned in it, right? For some odd reason, however that was, you know, didn't have like any wrongdoing, right? But then there's like people that you're like, okay, that makes a little bit more you know, maybe they didn't do anything, but like your name's in this like little window that I'm like, you could have done something, but I don't know if you did. But I wouldn't be shocked if you did. And then there's people like Prince Andrew, where you're like, kind of guarantee that your name was going to be on there. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Prince Andrew BBC interview, him trying to clear his name, which I think is probably one of the funniest interviews of all time. It is an interview that will go down in history as probably the worst interview of all time. And it's not like he was like, you know, nervous. You know, he's talked to the public before. Like, if you put somebody who has never talked or ever talked in front of you know, millions of people, yet alone like an audience, mind you, this is just an interview. And you would, you know, you kind of figured maybe crumble or maybe just be like, I don't really know what to say, right? He kept running circles, but he only made it worse for himself. So he was more of like a downward spiral. He was still doing circles, but it just happened to be very, very downward. And I think, and this is just my opinion, I think the interview did more harm than good because of that. So yeah, that's a pretty famous interview. I recommend go checking that out. Also, if you want kind of like a comedic take on kind of the Ghislaine Maxwell / Jeffrey Epstein, you know, saga, I recommend checking Jay Aubrey's video out on YouTube. I'll try and leave a link down below. He put a 3-part series out kind of as all this unraveled. And it's actually like a really solid series, to be honest. Like, I learned a lot from it. I learned about that interview that I just mentioned and, you know, just different things that was prior to this list being dropped. So that's like one thing that happened this year, even though it was in the past year. So that's one thing. There was, let's look up, maybe we could do this. Maybe we can look up this. Major events to happen. Let's just do 2023 because we kind of, you know, we had that. Oh, the Women's World Cup happened. That was pretty cool. Wikipedia saying the Russian invasion of Ukraine and Myanmar civil war continued. Okay, that continued. I was going to say, I thought that was 2022, even though it's still continuing. World events. You know what? Let's look up this. You know what? This is definitely not what I want. We have the global democratic recession continues. Okay, that's something. The space race heats up. Okay, yep. India's doing really well in the space race right now. Then we have India passes China as the world's most populous country. That's a fun fact. And then we have Azerbaijan seizes Nagorno-Karabakh. Is that a country? I don't know if I've ever heard that country. Civil war, Iraq, Sudan. Why did I say Sudan? Sudan. AI offers promise and peril. Okay. AI's been pretty big. I'm sure you guys have probably seen a lot of AI stuff. U.S.-China tensions simmer. Ukrainian counteroffensive gains little ground at a heavy cost. Hamas. Oh, this was pretty interesting. The Hamas attacks Israel. The Middle East war going on right now. And then global tension shatters records. This is number one, by the way. Out of all the important things, that is number one. Let's do, maybe this is like a visual of things. Oh, here we go. This is actually pretty good. This is actually pretty good. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we stopped uploading in March. Okay, so we have, anything good? Who declares the end of the 2019 global emergency? That's pretty interesting. That happened in May of last year. The coronation of King Charles, obviously the passing of Queen Lizzie. The Titan submarine goes missing. The SAG-AFTRA strike happened. So some of you guys' favorite shows may have had some actors and actresses going on strike there. July was the hottest month on global average surface and air temperature. Okay. Ooh, the Hawaiian wildfires. Yeah, that happened last year. 17,000 acres was burned. And then, is there anything like pop culture-esque? Because, there's something that just happened. We talked about this last year. And mind you, I have a few things kind of going on right now. But there was one thing that recently happened. You guys may remember Sam Bankman-Fried. That's it. I was messing up the F and the B. Sam Bankman-Fried. He actually just got charged and sentenced to 25 years for his, crimes within the alleged, cryptocurrency scam and fraud at FTX, which is pretty, I guess, kind of exciting news because I feel like there's a lot of influencers out there that do kind of those things, and then there's just never really any repercussion. We all know who we're talking about. We all know an influencer out there that, maybe is or has been in a controversy when it comes to crypto. Now, some people kind of collateral. Some people are just like unknowing and maybe just the spokesperson for stuff like this. But there is a difference when you're like, hey, this to the moon nation coin is to the moon and I hold like 99.9% of shares. You guys then, like, oh my God, I got to buy this nation coin. Got to support Jared in the pod, right? And then I'm just like, okay, well, bye guys. Never talk about it again. And I remember something like this happened. I'm a big impulsive watcher. I'm sure you guys maybe watched some episodes or, maybe at least know about it. And I remember back like 3 years ago, I was watching an episode and I remember Logan was like, man, dink doink. I remember he's like, yeah, you know what crypto I'm in? Dink doink. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting one. And then I just remember him like kind of mentioning like loosely like 3 other times. So that time and 2 others. And I was just like, okay, like it seems like it's a project he's kind of passionate about. Like if I kept mentioning about like an album dropping, right? Or like if I mention like, just some big event that's going to happen. But then you just like never mention it again, like never mention how it went or like the reception of it. And I was like, as a viewer, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is like interesting. Like I don't know. Like I'm just kind of like, I guess if they're going to sweep it on the rug, like it's out of sight, out of mind, right? And I was just like so confused because then it went from that to then CryptoZoo. And I was like, weren't you just like so big on this? And now you have your own crypto? I was like, what the frick is going on? And then obviously some things came out, which were pretty funny, that kind of, exposed not only the CryptoZoo side of things, but then that and the Dink Doink. And so, again, you've probably seen some, creators out there, or know any creators out there that maybe, how would I say it? Maybe, gave a little bit of credit and gave a quick promo, made a quick buck from some crypto rug pulls. So, not that I've ever like been like, oh my God, Dink Doink, like I've never just been like, I gotta pull up my phone. I gotta buy me some Dink Doink. So that's a little bit that has gone on. Obviously the FTX Sam, he's now in or going to jail at some point. He just got charged not too long ago as this episode is coming out. But I hope that there is more justice when it comes to that, just because, I feel, like I mentioned, I feel like a lot of creators have kind of gotten away with things like that. And to each of their own, of course, like just because one does something similar doesn't mean, that the other person is also as guilty or is, you can't compare them entirely. Because again, who knows? What about the contract? I'm not like a lawyer, but I know that is maybe not an okay thing to do. So, who knows? So that brings me to today because there's some pretty recent news, some that has been ongoing, some freshly ongoing, and then one that we don't exactly know what's really going to come out of this. And I'm going to kind of start with one that I'm kind of passionate about, something that I feel maybe I didn't exactly know the entire extent to some of this. And some of you guys may know some of these artists when it comes to what I'm about to talk about. And that is the beef between Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole. This is pretty wild, I have to say the least. Because there was a recent album that just came out, by Metro Boomin. You guys may know, like, Metro. If you guys have watched, like, the Spider-Verse, he, was the album artist, if that makes sense. And you may know who Future is. You probably listened to a handful of songs or, didn't know that it was him, but you probably listened to a handful of songs just in passing, or you're actually an avid listener. So they just released a collab album. Now, this isn't uncommon because Metro and 21 have done a few albums together. Metro has released a few albums with a bunch of features as on his albums, like Heroes versus Villains. You guys have all heard that doo-doo. It's kind of like that Homelander, like, villainous, like, intro that kind of gets played a lot. So they just released a brand new album, and it wasn't an album that I exactly knew that was coming out, but I did after a certain song called Like That was played. Now, there's a lot of people that listen to albums as they come out, especially rap ones. Rap's usually like an album or a genre of music, rap and hip-hop, that gets listened very prevalently when albums drop. Now, pop artists like even like Ariana Grande just dropped an album, and I didn't even know Beyonce just dropped her album not too long ago. And very similar to this one as well, I didn't know that it came out a few weeks ago. And the one main thing is, as people are listening, they usually look at features, and some artists don't necessarily put all the features on there right away because it's kind of like a little bit of a surprise. Like, oh, that artist is on there. And this is no different because probably like 2 minutes into this song called Like That, there was a special feature named Kendrick Lamar that just went in. He just went in. And when I mean in, I mean like in. It's not like, is it in type beat? No, it's like, it's in. Thank you very much. So pretty much, like I mentioned, I also have like an auto turn off, so my phone keeps turning off. Kind of like a very surprise feature. And Kendrick Lamar has been known to be very lucrative about either his features or some of music that's been coming out as of recent. Now, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers was an album that came out in 2022, 5 years after his last album, Damn, came out, that has like Humble, DNA, Loyalty with Rihanna, songs like that. And so to do like a feature that, like this, especially, not like with his cousin Baby Keem, but to do a feature like this and have lyrics, you know, that are basic shots, like not like basically shots and ammunition, just like firing shots, right, at Drake. And I would say primarily Drake, in my opinion, and J. Cole. And just here's some of the shots that I personally like, and also some shots in the song. And so he said, these fellas talking out they necks. They pull no coffin out. Don't pull no coffin out your mouth. I'm way too paranoid for a threat. Okay, cool. And he says, DOT, the money, power, respect. The last one is better. Say, it's a lot of goofies with a check. Okay, you know, pretty going in right now. He says, F sneak this in first-person shooter. I hope they came with 3 switches. Now, I feel like I'm pretty smart in understanding lyrics. This was a lyric that I fully didn't understand. I understand the first-person line, but I'm not entirely sure what the 3 switches is, because I'm sure that that's kind of like the, you know, the antithesis of the first-person shooter. I'm assuming it means a gun. That's just what I think it is. And so, lost too many soldiers not to play it safe. If you walk around with that stick, which I believe again it is, it ain't Andre 3K. Think I won't drop the location, I still got PTSD. Mother F the big 3, fella, it's just big me. Pretty freaking crazy. Because in first person shooter, J. Cole has a line talking about like, we're going to start in a league like the Big 3, which is a league by Ice Cube, basketball league. He's talked about being a Big 3 with, is it Aubrey K. Dot, something, or me, right? It's J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, which is pretty crazy because, you know, Locations and PTSD are songs by J. Cole and Dreamville. And obviously like the first person shooter, but then it kind of, again, goes into this Drake verse, or Drake diss where it says, wait, I'm really like that. Again, the title of the song. And your best work is a light pack. Fella, Prince outlived Mike Jack. Which, if you don't know, literally happened by 7 years. Prince outlived Michael Jackson by 7 years. But this, I think, is more or less meaning that Prince's influence on music was a lot more and outlived Michael Jackson, because Drake compares himself to Michael Jackson very heavily, as well as, you know, Kendrick in a way is to Prince. It is these two, where again, J. Cole is just kind of the middle child in this case, in this line. So he says, for all your dogs getting buried, again, for all your dogs by Drake, that's a K with all these 9s, right? K9s, guns. He gonna see Pet Sematary, which is a movie by, I don't remember what Pet Sematary is in this line. Not that it's it's more or less just kind of playing along the words of like dogs and Pet Sematary, right? So there's some of the lyrics in here that, you know, are pretty heavy, right? Like they're very obviously directed at these two. And I watched a video last night talking about the beef between Kendrick and J. Cole. I think the beef within Drake and Metro and Future, and even Travis Scott nowadays, that has been something worth talking about. I'm not going to go into detail. I recommend just watching some videos on it, because I'm not entirely well-versed in this. But there has been some beef that has gone on for some time, like 10 years worth of time. And there's some stuff now that, you know, Future and Drake are going after the same woman. And then, you know, Metro is, you know, he made a decision on that album, Heroes vs. Villains, by taking one of Drake's verses off. And Drake didn't take that lightly. He unfollowed Metro. And then on the day of the album drop, this last album, Metro then unfollowed Drake, meaning like, hey, this is public. Like, this is kind of meant to be what I have been hearing, a civil war within the rap sphere. We all know the civil war between like Iron Man and Captain America, and whose side are you on? You got Spider-Man on this side, you got Thor on this side, but this is like, you got Drake, Kendrick, Metro Boomin, you got Future, you got them all on these different sides, and it is kind of crazy because, again, it feels like for us now, and, for people like myself that didn't exactly know, I knew kind of like the touch points, but I didn't know exactly the 10 years worth of beef that has happened for even Future and Drake. There's been some things that J. Cole has said, that Kendrick has said at or near each other in a way. So that rap beef is pretty interesting. And for those that aren't really into rap or like maybe don't exactly know what's going on, this is like if Ariana Grande came out and was like, yeah, I'm just like the best. I am the GOAT. I'm better than Dua Lipa. I'm coming for Dua. I'm coming for Taylor. I'm coming for Beyonce. Like, this is, it's kind of like that. It's like, imagine if there's like an ongoing brewing some type of brewing stuff, drama, that is going on within like more of like the pop. And like Ariana Grande, she just dropped an album. She's like, hey, like I run this shit, and like, came after like those names I mentioned, Dua, Taylor, Beyonce, and it's like, whose side are you on? Like, does Ariana Grande, like somebody's on that album, coming at other people, again, this doesn't really happen in like pop culture or like pop music, that is, excuse me. It doesn't really happen. There's like a few subliminals maybe, but I think more of it is kind of that upbeat storytelling, groovy, catchy, or even, emotional songs, right? So I feel like rap is a little bit more cutthroat in that way. You don't see this a whole lot in other genres. Like, there's some like classical flutists out there that's like going in on like some other classical flutist, that's not really something that happens. I'm sure there's some beef within the flute, community, but to each of their own. But yeah, like I said, it is kind of like a civil war. I'm really not sure what this means for the climate of rap. I mean, to a point, there was a line drawn in the sand when it comes to, these artists and these rappers. And obviously some of them are on tour, some of them are performing right now. And so it's a little exciting, I think, as a fan of, some of pretty much all their music, Drake, Kendrick, and Cole. I'm just excited. I'm just excited. That's really it. I think, some are better than others, but this just makes me very excited for what is to come. And something that maybe I think some of us didn't foresee is the P Diddy Raids. The P Diddy Raids, wow. These are pretty interesting. I have a lot of notes on here, and I'm not gonna lie, I may just read from these because my notes are pretty long on here. Let me just start. The P Diddy Raids the P Diddy allegations / raids are something I'm sure none of us expected to an extent. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, just like P Diddy, didn't expect himself, right? So let me just take you guys back. I'm sure you guys have probably watched a video like, why is P Diddy getting raided right now? But for those that don't know, in late 2023, an ex-lover of P Diddy, Cassie Ventura, came out in light with allegations talking about sexual misconduct with the rap mogul, P. Diddy, Sean Combs, whatever you want to call him. I'm probably just going to call him Diddy because it's the easiest way to pronounce who he is. So basically, after a while, Cassie and P. Diddy, settled on a cash consideration or cash settlement, right? Kind of like attorneys at law, get your cash now, right? So they basically, settled it in court, to whatever extent that is. And by any means, I think a lot of us, very commonly would look at it and be like, yeah, he kind of did that. This is kind of just like, hey, be quiet. Here's some money, right? And probably 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times, that's probably the case, right? But I think there's also a side where we can't look at that as like an admission of guilt, right? But money does equal power. And if, you can scrub this under the rug, then it's fine for Diddy, right? He can give, $5 million. He's scratching his butt at that point, right? But after that happened, the hard part about this, and what I've come to know reading some articles about this, is that when this does happen, then you do get a lot of other people coming out with allegations, whether they are true or not, because if you want your name out of the spotlight, you're going to have to pay us money, right? And so a lot of people, a few people, I don't remember their names, came out talking about Diddy did this, Diddy has done this in the, the late 90s, right? That's 30 years ago, like early to late 90s, right? The entire 90s, let's just say that. And mind you, that's a while ago. Obviously, like, I don't remember what happened in like 2010. That's even 14 years ago. So that's double that. And be like, hey, like, he's done this. And mind you, these people are probably older. I was also like 10 at that time. But that doesn't mean that they're not wrong, right? And so, those ones are ongoing. There hasn't been anything done with that. Diddy's obviously denied the allegations within sexual misconduct and these really crazy things that he has done with either other people, participants in his crazy parties that he's had. And these are his words, not mine. Or the allegations in the court documents words, not mine. So all these happen. There's one person in particular that does come out and maybe has a little bit more credibility than some of the other ones. And his name is Little Rod. Now, I do kind of find it funny his name is Little Rod. Regardless, he's a producer. He was an up-and-coming producer. P. Diddy kind of took him under his wing and was like, hey, like, I know your idol. Like, is this guy, you want to meet him, right? Like, you want to be, obviously, like, just like your idol, you kind of want to be like them, right? And, he offers the opportunity. He's like, whoa, these things that my quote-unquote idol is doing is maybe not exactly what I expected him to do when, invited into the studio. And, he kind of was in for a shock, right? And so within these allegations, Diddy or Little Rod claimed that Diddy made sexual advances towards him multiple times, hosted sex parties with sex workers and underage women, had controlled a sex trafficking ring, and a list of other crazy things. Now, again, the three that I kind of mentioned are the big ones. Those are the heavy hitters. There's drugs. There's a lot of sex, especially with underage women in this case. And there's a lot of things that I'm sure Little Rod was not expecting. And there's a few names even listed in the plaintiffs in the Spark Notes where it's like, hey, Philadelphia rapper that dated Nicki Minaj. It's like, there's really only one rapper that like probably fits that narrative. Philadelphia and dated Nicki Minaj. It's gotta be Meek Mills, right? So you have that. You have like already Meek Mills already on like the struggle bus, and 50 Cent's gone crazy. He's like posted some stuff about Meek Mills and P Diddy, having sex, which is really funny. And then you have another like Spark Note talking about Usher, like an R&B artist that just performed at the Super Bowl in a way. And now I was like thinking like Rihanna. That was my initial, but I think a lot of people have clued it to Usher. And Usher has also come out talking about some things, which I'll get into. But basically, this all came out pretty much like late February, right? Late February, slight early March. And I wasn't super like aware of like what was going on. I remember I was like on a run, pulled up my phone and like, somebody, I remember seeing like an article on like my Instagram talking about like, oh, P. Diddy's like plane got like landed, like somebody, it was forced to land. And all the comments were like, oh, that must mean he did it, I was like, what's going on, right? Like what in the world is going on, right? So, like I said, a month later, FBI agents raided Diddy's LA mansion and Miami mansion. And the funny part, like I just mentioned, is he tried to attempt to leave the country. But the hard part and what we don't know as the public is if he tried or was, in a way, on that plane from Miami to the Caribbean. He was trying to flee the country in a way. And, like any plane, like any private plane, every plane and everything that flies in the sky has a serial number on it. So you might see like NJ986C, right? You might see something like that. That could be tied to, certain logs. It could be tied to a certain person. You see this very commonly. You could see the travel and the path and the, almost like the Epstein list. You could see the flight logs of, people or things that were, or just where it was heading. So it was forced to land. And again, we don't know if, Diddy was on that private jet. But, I think personally this kind of comes as a surprise because, again, I didn't even know that these things were ongoing. I didn't know Little Rod had came out. I didn't know Cassie Ventura had came out. But the best part is that, like, this video, you may have seen the video of him, like, pacing outside of, I don't even know where it was. Some people had said it was LA. Other people have said it's Miami. Of him just, like, pacing back and forth and just, like, super slowly pacing back and forth. Like at almost like half speed, maybe a quarter of speed. Like he's not on the phone. He's not, like when you're pacing, you usually kind of take like a natural stride. This guy is like moving in slow-mo. He's going like heel to toe, heel to toe. I'm like, brother, I've seen sloths move faster. I've seen a caterpillar climb up a tree faster than you can walk 5 feet. Oh my God. So that video was super funny when I first saw it. I'm sure you guys might have seen it as well. But it was painful. And like all the comments were like, oh, that doesn't look like a guy that feels innocent, right? Like, you did something wrong when like his life just felt like it went upside down. And that's putting it lightly because like his world did kind of just flip upside down. Like everything was in his control. Everything that he did was, well monitored. He had a lot of power, right? He had a lot of puppeteering over a lot of different things. And whether that was for his companies, his houses, the people that he knew, there comes a point where maybe it all catches up to you, right? And this one thing is super funny. And when this was all coming out, my mom was on it. My mom was like fiending for this, right? My mom was like dying to see P. Diddy go down. And not to say that she's P. Diddy's biggest hater, but my mom has never really talked well about P. Diddy. I remember this one time, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I think it was kind of during COVID. We were watching a show, and P. Diddy's one of the hosts on this show. And I kind of thought it was a little weird just knowing the cast, and like he's kind of older, but it still kind of makes sense. But he's an artist. I kind of get why he would be on there, but it just seemed kind of like a wild, it just seems really odd. And my mom, like, every time the camera panned over to him, she was like, oh, it's P. Diddy. Like, she was just like for no reason, right? Like, for no reason. Oh, yeah, it's Sean Combs. We all know he done it. Like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? And so, my mom's never talked really in good sportsmanship about P. Diddy in a good light, right? And, my mom was like, oh, he done it. He did it. Tupac could have been alive because of him. And I'm like, Mom, what the frick is going on? Like, what's happening right now? So with that, let me see. I think I have one more thing in here about this. But yeah. Oh, here it is. My mom, it felt like my mom was like an FBI agent, just like, oh yeah, I know he did something. Like my mom like had that like sixth sense, like she does with like her kids. Like she had that really just like mom-innate feeling about like P. Diddy. He's like, he's up to no trouble. He's up to no good. And my mom, like, forever. And I don't know if, like, some of your parents, kind of knew about the P. Diddy, even, like, Suge Knight type stuff, and Tupac's murder. But there was, like, a time where, like, P. Diddy kind of was in the spotlight. And it's just weird that he kind of, like, resurged himself in that way. And from somebody like me, because, like, I kind of knew about him, but he didn't pull, like, a Snoop Dogg where it's, like, fun that he's back. It's like, oh, you're back, kind of like that way. And my mom was always like, yeah, he's had like sex parties, or probably all coked up. And I'm like, Jesus, Mom, is this like coming from like the heart, or like, do you know that these like things happen? And now obviously some of these have been brought up, and just like any internet sleuth like myself, or maybe some of you guys that wants to look up, or, there's people that are a lot more prevalent to this and on the foot when it comes to looking up old videos of P. Diddy with people like Usher, or Usher talking about him at his flavor camp when he was like 13. He was like, Usher got asked, he's like, would you send your kids to Usher or like P. Diddy's flavor camp? He's like, hell no. It's like, oh, okay, that seems kind of odd, Like, did you have a good time? He's like, I saw some things. I was like, oh, well, that can't be good. And so with that, you see, Justin Bieber, you see some videos like Justin Bieber was doing like, he was kind of up and coming, he just came out with like Baby and whatnot. And P. Diddy's like with him. He's like, hey, we're going to be spending 48 hours together. Like, I legally, have custody over you. And it's like just weird that he would say that. And like, it was just really weird. And you look at those things very differently. P. Diddy's also been on like TikTok lives with like 15-year-olds, like not like battling like Jason Nash. No, he's been like in the room and he's been like, so I talked to your parents. I have legal custody over you. I saw potential. What the like, what is going on? And there's like 8 other people in the room, like kind of like popping in, like, wait, what's going on? I don't know if they know what's going on regardless, but there are videos that are starting to resurface that maybe we look at in a different light, because, things that are happening now and being recorded now and posted, it makes me question what those, things may become. And not that I'm looking at like everything like that. It's like, maybe something's wrong there. But, when we saw like the Kate Middleton thing, I think people were like, oh, well, why is this photo, like, why out of all things, it's just a family photo. It just looks wrong, And so I think there's things that are being recorded now that maybe in the future we'll look back on and be like, oh, we'll start to look at that in a different lens. We'll look at that in a different light. And not to say that every video is like that, but when there is like a glaring issue, I bring up the Kate Middleton thing. She's obviously came out and said that she's diagnosed with cancer, which like a lot of people are hating on those, like, oh, you basically bullied her to announce her cancer thing. But there is a point to that. There also is a point, especially with the British press and, the relationships they have with some of the press there, that was like, well, why would they just Photoshop a photo? And like, especially like if William is going to this place and they're trying to make it seem like everything's fine, but like we can see right through it. So yes, there is credibility to people bullying or like saying like, yo, we bullied Kate Middleton to, come out and like announce her cancer diagnosis. But there also is a point, especially when you, with the royal family, it's like, if the queen died like 3 years ago and we've never seen her, we're going to be like, she might be dead. She might be gone. It's like, why have we not seen her in 3 years, right? And mind you, this was like only like a month and a half, but just things seemed off, right? And so obviously we're wishing, and hopefully we're wishing, Kate Middleton, obviously a speedy recovery within her cancer diagnosis. Ninja also got a type of skin cancer from a mole recently at 32. I don't know how old Kate Middleton is. I think she's like 44 now. So yeah, we're wishing everyone the best in their recovery, whether that's chemotherapy, whether that's, some new technology that we're trying out. Who knows? So that's some news that's been going on. The P Diddy Raids, Jesus, that is wild. And I think that brings us to our final topic of today. Now, this topic was something that one of you guys actually mentioned to me quite a bit a while ago. Is that quite a while ago? A bit of time ago, quite a while ago. This is a topic that some of you guys may know about now. My mom certainly also knows about it. So if my mom knows about it, there's probably a great percentage and a high percentage that you also know about this. And I'm talking about Ruby Franke and Jolie Hildebom. Now, Ruby Franke was the mom of a channel called 8 Passengers. Now, Ruby the mom, Brian the dad, 6 kids. That's how there's 8 passengers. They've been making family vlogs for quite some time. The late 2010s, 17, 18, 19, as the kids are kind of growing up. And she's making these videos, And, you know, to their point, they somewhat seem harmless. But again, like I mentioned, there's videos now that we look in a different light where it's like, oh, like you played a prank on your brother for saying that you're going to Disneyland, you need to pack. And now his punishment is that he doesn't get a bed for a month and he's sleeping on like a beanbag at 15 years old. Like, okay, like I get it. It's just like a harmless prank, you know, maybe the parenting was a little questionable. There was a few things, you know, that we kind of string together now that we're like, oh, like maybe just like not feeding your daughter because she forgot her lunch pail is maybe not like the best issue or like the best way to handle it, right? Like I understand if like teaching her a lesson or like if she forgot her coat, like what is she going to do? Just like freeze the entire day? Like be a mom, like yeah, at least like help, you know, at least, you know, have a solution, right? Either bring her a coat, get her some food, bring her lunch pail or whatnot. Don't just let it sitting on the counter waiting for tomorrow's lunch to be picked up. So there was some pretty questionable parenting on, Ruby's behalf. I always want to say Jody. It's Ruby. Jody's another part in this, which further later on. But basically, Ruby's, again, running this account, running this channel with her family. And, you know, there's her kids, there's, you know, the older kids, there's the younger kids. And, again, this questionable parenting within her vlogs. And I think a lot of people pointed it out to kind of like the dismay of Ruby, because I feel like, again, this platform kind of brought her a little bit of power, which, you know, is understandable. Like she has like an audience, but I think when people started putting her parenting into question, she was like Michael Jordan and took that very personally, right? She took that personally. And again, it is kind of like personal because it's like, it's your parenting, right? If like your parenting was a little questionable, you know, like some people breastfeed until like 9 months upwards to a year. And, you know, whereas like some like are off it like right away. Like once they're done, they're done, right? That's just kind of like how that goes. And like, if I was like, hey, like this worked for my kid, this is what I did, right? It's fine, right? But there was a certain person that came into Ruby's life. Her name is Jody Hildebaum. And basically when she kind of came into Ruby's life, once Ruby kind of stepped away from the YouTube channel, Ruby decided to take on a different role as what I would consider a life coach, more in the relationship aspect, which I don't know if Ruby's the best one for giving any advice with relationships. Just saying. Not that she has like a bad relationship with her husband, but there was a point where maybe there was some disagreements, right? And, you know, it's like if you're a drug user and we're a drug addict, like you could also become like a drug therapist because you know what it's like. So again, maybe not the best initially for Ruby, but especially in this current state. But she signs on to, you know, be a co-partnership with Jody Hildebaum in this, you know, funny enough, Connections. Something Connections. I don't remember what it is, but there was like I'm just going to call it Lifetime Connections, right? Because that kind of makes sense. And it was this, you know, life relationship coaching for couples that maybe were struggling. And, you know, there was some users and clientele that, you know, maybe questioned why like this was the route that they went when things were fine. Jody's not a great person. I'm just going to put that out there because there was one person that came out and mentioned like her husband or no, her wife, his wife and him had been like separated. Like they had been like, she had been basically trying to control her and be like, hey, take some time away, because this is actually what Jody did to Ruby. Ruby tried, or Jesus Christ, there's so many names. Jody wanted basically just Ruby to herself and was like, hey, let Brian be away. You know, we're going to focus on our issues separately. And then we're going to try and converge back together. But once that first step was done, where like they got Brian, the husband of Ruby, away and the parent to the kids, then it doesn't matter when they converge, right? To her, the only thing was that, hey, I just need you gone. And once Brian was like, hey, like, okay, I understand. Ruby basically was a little bit manipulated, in my opinion, to, you know, just be like, hey, we're gonna separate, and that's fine. That's like very fine. Like I understand like couples and relationships like that, you know, sometimes it's nice to be away for a bit and come back, but that comeback part was never a part of Jody's plans, at least from her perspective. And in a way, this kind of caused what I would call the biggest riffle in this, because Jody had done this to countless other clients, couples that is, where she would try and just move them away and then try and manipulate primarily the female, the woman in the relationship, or at least one of them, to be like, hey, he's a bad guy. He is not good for you. And it's like, what? We were just fine. Like we've been together for 10 years. Like things are fine. He is not good for you. Why are you saying this? Like, why everything is good. Like, he's very caring. We have like 18 kids together. So she basically did that with Ruby. She's done this with other clients. Ruby decided to co-partnership this whole connections thing. And basically, this led into what, again, I believe is the biggest riffle within this plan. Because, again, I think a part of this is preventable, but it's not a high percentage of this. Keeping the husband in the picture was by far the biggest thing that could have helped, obviously, these kids, right? Brian seems like a very sensible guy, but he doesn't seem like the guy that's going to speak up and step out of line, right? He's not going to be like, no. Don't, he doesn't seem very confronting, right? And I think Jody kind of realized that. Ruby also knew that. And, obviously with the kids, they just want to live normal lives. They don't look really like they enjoy these vlogs. And to their point, the vlog kind of stopped. The channel is now terminated after especially this news comes out. One of the kids, the youngest boy, I believe, he is found. He is wandered off from the house. He has gone over to another neighbor's house. And mind you, they live in like buttfuck nowhere, Utah. They live in Washington County, which is kind of funny because I live in Washington. They live in Washington County, Utah. That's like the county they live in, of course. And your neighbors aren't like super far, but like you have enough walking distance. You could see the other houses, but it's of course a little walking distance. And the kid knocks on the door. This couple opens the door and is like, whoa, what is going on? Like, this kid is very malnourished. He is like skin and bones. Like, he is not okay, like from a physical standpoint. Mind you, we don't, he's trying to like be like, hey, I need help, right? And there's not really like a way for him to really ask that. He's probably never asked that in his life, But one of the kids, the youngest boy, was found malnourished on August 30th, 2023, the turn of the month. That same day, Ruby and I believe Jody get arrested. I know Ruby for certain was arrested this day, the same day, the exact same day. So the next day, there was a statement from the oldest daughter. Her name's Sherry Franke. I really hate how they spelled her last name. They don't have an I. It's like Frank E. It's literally Frank in the letter E. Regardless. Sherry, the oldest daughter, she's 18. She's actually 20 at this point. So she's older than 18, so her name is actually public. She said, me and my family are so glad justice is served. We have been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and I'm so glad that they finally decided to step up. The kids are safe, but there's a long road ahead. So basically, they also did a raid on Jody and Ruby in a way. And these weren't released to the public until very later on, until they were fully charged, until things were kind of finalized. And, as they're going on, that was the 31st. Ruby's sisters react. So this is Elaine Metcham, Bonnie Holaine, and Julie Daru. Behind the public scene, we have done everything to try and make sure the kids were safe. We wouldn't feel right about moving forward with regular content without addressing the most recent events. Once we do, we will not be commenting any further on it. Makes sense. And obviously, it seems like when your family, especially your oldest daughter and your 3 sisters, are being like, hey, we're glad the kids are safe, and we kind of bitch slapping Ruby around and being like, right, give her the middle finger. And granted, it's very, very valid. And so a few days later, about a week later, on September 6, 2023, charges were filed. Ruby and Jody were charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse by the Washington County Attorney, again, Washington County, in Utah. So they were charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse. And this comes because not only was the youngest daughter, all the kids, and obviously the kid that was found that wandered off, to his, he literally probably saved his entire family in a way, right? He literally fled the house and at his young age was like, hey, I got to go do this. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story. There was all these kids. I don't remember what it is. I'll see if I remember it here. But there was this daughter. They all lived, these parents had a bunch of kids. And one of the youngest of all of them, fled the house and needed to call up a phone. I think, it's the House of Horror. It's the House of Horror. So these kids are 18 and they have the maturity of a 10-year-old because they've never been outside. Their parents basically refuse them to talk to anybody, especially on any family trip or any family gathering. And so same thing here. I recommend watching the ABC playlist of the House of Horror. It's a pretty wild story, especially something like this where one of the kids, very similar to the House of Horror, where one of the kids had to escape to go basically save their entire family. And so basically, again, files were charged. Kevin Franke, the husband, breaks his silence. He came forward to deny any involvement in the alleged crimes. His lawyer, Randy Kester, told Good Morning America the spouses had been living apart for 13 months. Again, Jody removed Kevin out of the situation. And he said, again, that they've been living apart for 13 months before the arrest. He's a good person and he's very gentle. Just great attributes. What is going on? Why is... Uh-oh, that's probably not good. There is a fire truck across the street right now. And there's an old man that lives across the street right now, too. This is wild. Hold on. Oh, is a house on fire? What's going on? Okay, I'll keep you guys monitored on that. But anywho, Kevin's a good person, and he's very gentle. There was a video that came out post persecution that, he kind of comes out and is like, hey, do you trust Jody? He's like, I respect her. But there is a part, what is going on? It's so hard to podcast right now when your neighbor might not be alive. This guy is old, by the way. Used to mow his lawn every day. He now has people that he bought. Oh, yep. Oh, this probably is not good. They're walking up to that house as we speak. I'll keep you guys updated. So that was September 6th. By November 29th, 2.5 months later, Kevin files for divorce, which I'm surprised he didn't do earlier, right? So that happens on December 18th, right before Christmas. They both enter a guilty plea, which basically means that, hey, we're taking a lesser sentence to say, yes, we are responsible for these. And so, because I think at some point there's no way that they're getting out of that, right? So it's take a lesser punishment, but you're still going to get punished, right? It's kind of in school. It's hey, did you cheat on your paper? It's hey, I'm still going to have to enforce a punishment, but it's going to be lesser than what it would be if you just lied to me, right? So with that, they both enter a guilty plea. Ruby enters a guilty plea for 4 of her charges, and Jody has a 4-count of second-degree felony aggravated child abuse. Now, to each of their own. I don't know if they have the exact same. It seems like they kind of do, but they worded it differently in this article. And so that's December 18th. Now, 2 months later, prison sentencing. Both of the women were sentenced to 4 consecutive 1 to 15-year sentences, which will be capped at the 30-year max in Utah. So basically, if they get 2 15 years, it's only going to be max. So they can at least, if it's 4 consecutive, they could get 7 to 8. I think no more than 8 per person. So that happened. They both pretty much get sentenced to like 20 years in prison, if not 30. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 30. Ruby apologizes that very same day, which I guess you do. At this point, she says, for the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. She said in court, my distorted version of reality went largely unchecked, so I would isolate from anyone who challenged me, which makes sense. She continued, to my babies, you are a part of me. I believe dark was light and right was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good. Wow, what a why. She thought about that one for some time. That's for sure. She also said that her oldest son was like a sexual predator. Like in court, she was like, yeah, to distract from what she did. Like she's throwing her son under the bus. And so that happens on February 20th. A month later, Ruby's diary revealed. So prosecutors released chilling journal entries in which she wrote about her mistreatment of her children, including her satanic tween son. Crazy. Okay, so she wrote, he slithers and sneaks around looking for opportunities when no one is watching, and then he scurries. Like, what is he, a rat? Like, what like, why would you put it like that? So she wrote in a journal entry from July 10th, again, 2 months, like a month and a half, actually, before the child was found, which was her son's 12th birthday. If he wants to emulate the Savior, he needs to be 100% obedient with exactness, no wavering, no hiding. She wrote about punishing her child by beating them and withholding food and water, which again, that Kevin interview comes out to public, talking about these are the rules now placed on me. Like I can leave when I want, but I couldn't come back until Ruby gave me permission. I couldn't come into the kitchen to eat until Ruby gave me permission. And the upstairs where Jody was completely offline. I couldn't go upstairs anymore in my own house. And Ruby would dictate all the terms of how our interactions would be when we would talk. And that was hard. Like imagine like having like that type of relationship with your significant other. Kind of wild. And so that was Kevin's living for quite some time. He obviously then moved out, or maybe was forced out. I'm sure he was morally forced out. And so that happened. The pictures, like I mentioned, this isn't in the article, but the pictures of, it's just like a dungeon. It's like a dungeon that's only locked from the outside. So these kids are just in this room, malnourished, withheld from food and water for being punished for whatever reason. And it is grim. It is like, it is wild. It is wild that Ruby, yet alone Jody might be the devil. But Ruby, like doing that to your own kids, like yet alone, the troubles of like a 9-month pregnancy just to get them out and physically into your own arms. But to like then years later and be like, he's sly. He keeps hiding and he cannot be obedient unless he's exact. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's like, it's okay if like a kid lashes out. It's okay if you do something wrong. But obviously, I don't believe Ruby in the slightest when she says that, oh, I'm sorry for what I've did. This was like quite a long time coming before even Jody was a part of the picture. I just feel like Jody heightened a lot of things. Jody was like, that girl I'm going to get along with because they're kind of both really bad people. And so that was that's the current update on the Ruby Franke 8-passenger story. I'm wishing all the well for all the kids. Just because I could imagine with all this going on, talk about like not having like a father figure to grow up, which is kind of common, but in this case, not having a mother figure, yet alone if she's good or bad. But I appreciate and love that like the oldest daughter has been trying to, speak up and being like, hey, so like she's just trying to get justice for her kids. She doesn't have custody of her own siblings, but there is definitely, again, some healing, obviously, with these kids. I'm sure like when I was 11, I was riding bikes with cards on them down the street, thinking I was like, had a motorcycle, right? And these kids are like wondering when they're going to like be let out of this dungeon that is, I guess, their room at this point. And so I feel for the kids. I wish nothing but the best when it comes to their success and growth over these next few years. And obviously beyond that. And so, yeah, it's just bad. And especially with the P Diddy, and just everything. Everything feels like so bad. The bridge, which is a lot of bad stuff going on. Maybe we need some more lighthearted topics, There was one, maybe I can end off maybe on a high note. There was this woman, she's 18 years old, down in like lower left Washington. I'm not sure the city, but lower left Washington, this power line came down. There's water. Power lines don't really blend well. You die. And basically there's a baby that, fell, that is on this father's chest. The father, I believe, the mother, has since passed because of the electrocution. There is a father and a brother, to this young baby. And the, father tries to go grab the baby, ends up getting electrocuted and passing away. The brother, also the same fate. And this brave young 18-year-old woman, some may say child, brave, little baby, right on the mother's chest that has since passed because of the electrocution. And the bravery of this woman, of any person on this planet, this current day, at this current time, just watch two people perish from electrocution and had the bravery and courage to go save that baby. Absolutely crazy. If you guys don't know about it, I'm sure you guys can look it up. It's a pretty... I like how I said I was going to end up on a high note, which I hope I did in a way, but that is a pretty wild story. I remember reading it and I was just like, damn, like that happened in Washington, yet alone just like seeing that and being like, hey, I got to go save that kid still. I'm sure the fight or flight was kicking in there. Maybe not. I think it's going to be kind of hard to be on a high note here. My neighbor, I've not seen anything happen yet. Two people went into the house. I have not seen anyone come out of it yet, but I will keep you guys notified in next episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hopefully, I will be able to get these out as quickly as possible each week. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Realest Podcast. I appreciate you guys. Make sure to leave a like down below. Let me know what topics you guys would like to hear me discuss, or anything within the past year that maybe I missed. But I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.